What are the most important fantasy football takeaways from the picks of the players in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft? Time to break it down right here and right now as we get another show, another week on Locked On Fantasy Football.
Our Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com and broke down the draft in detail, rounds 1, 2, 3. I did live pick-by-pick analysis. You can check it out now after the draft is over, as well as handing out grades for all 32 teams. So check those out at sportingnews.com. We're going to parlay that into our analysis here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Now, we broke down the first round in depth, all the picks there. If you missed it on Friday's show right after the Thursday night action, we talked about all the picks. Now, for rounds 2 and rounds 3, a lot of action happened in the offensive skill department. So what we'll do, we'll take it in 2 shows so we can really dedicate the time to break down the picks at running back and wide receiver. Mainly, there are also some intriguing tight end and quarterback picks that we need to look at. But yeah, looking mainly at round 2 and round 3, the offensive skill players. So we'll pull those players out, those selections, really just focus on the current teams they're at now and what those potential roles can be and what that means for fantasy football. We have the running backs entering the fray. So excited to talk about the top 2 running backs on the board here. And we will break down round 2 and round 3. We'll do a quick recap of it. If there's any sleeper value in rounds 4 through 7 there in our middle week show. And then we'll put it all together, see where these rookies rank. So a lot of fallout from the NFL draft here on Locked On Fantasy Football this week. Next week, we'll have the schedule release there. So something to look forward to, again, that sets the tone for the fantasy football season. So excited about that. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. And I also am pleased to tell you today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, let's dive right into the picks here in rounds 2 and round 3. The biggest splash pick that we were looking for in fantasy football. Who would the Packers take there to help replace Devonte Adams and to some degree Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Well, they went after a player, made a deal with the Vikings in their own division and for a player in the Vikings territory from North Dakota State, Christian Watson. So big-time sleeper. He took the combine by storm, really was a rising prospect. Some people thought he was going to sneak in there to the bottom half of the first round. The Packers could have considered him. They instead took Skyy Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, and then another player from that Georgia defense, Devonte Wyatt, the tackle/end. So people are saying, where's the wide receiver? Are they doing this to Aaron Rodgers again? Are they going to take a quarterback instead and pull another Jordan Love? Nope, they stuck to their guns and they had a wide receiver they liked, and it was important because good deep wide receiver class, and you had the big 6 go pretty early. And I think that's what threw out the Packers, where not only did you have Drake London surprise everyone and go early to the Falcons, but in quick succession after that, you had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jameson Williams, and then the Commanders jumped on Jahan Dotson, and then the Titans made that deal involving A.J. Brown, so they got locked into Treylon Burks. So you had 6 wide receivers go. The Packers didn't want to tap into that tier. They did like Watson a lot. They probably thought they could get him in the second round. They did. They moved up a little bit. So they can thank the Vikings for that. But Christian Watson profiles a little bit like both of these guys, Adams and MVS. Big size target there. And good speed as well. So you can stretch the field, make big plays, play on the outside. And look, Al Lazard is their best returning receiver. They have Randall Cobb in the mix right now, but really, Watson should dominate targets. When you look at Devonte Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Equanimeous St. Brown, you can throw them in the mix. So you're looking at close to 250 targets vacated there. And that is a lot. And Al Lazard is not going to see a big expansion to pick those up. So Christian Watson loved this pick for the Packers in fantasy. Again, kind of a dual threat guy in terms of being that big guy that can finish in the red zone, use his body, run great routes, have the hands there that Aaron Rodgers can trust, but also provide that field stretching element that is missing without MBS here. And Adams started to do that a little bit more later in his Packers career, as they had to do that as a necessity because they didn't have a lot of wide receivers to perform in that sense. But looking at the Packers, good pick here, rebounding from that tough first round where they got a lot of heat. Now, Watson is going to be on the radar as a probably wide receiver too, given the way that Amon-Ra St. Brown and Elijah Moore produced last year. So he steps into a better situation with the two-time MVP quarterback here. So that back-to-back, good starting point there for Watson replacing Devonte Adams. Now, 2 running backs came off the board next and the offensive skill positions, and I didn't have them exactly in this order, and I didn't have them really on the radar for these teams as much. The Jets kind of developed as a destination for one of these backs. First up was Breece Hall out of Iowa State. He goes to the Jets here. Now, probably kills our Michael Carter love here. We loved him last year as a sleeper. He came through for a little while, but he just couldn't stay healthy. He had the ankle issue. Remember, they kept Tevin Coleman in the mix, and it was not pretty in the end for Michael Carter. He just couldn't stay on the field, just like Zach Wilson. They both had a lot of injury issues at quarterback and running back as their primary guys there. So Carter didn't hold up. They wanted for a guy that could actually be a feature back. Breece Hall is that guy. So look at what the Jets have done. Look at their offensive line. Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera Tucker. They had Laken Tomlinson. They're a very good run blocker from the 49ers. Good familiarity with Michael Floor from being in Kyle Shanahan's system together. So upgraded the offensive line at different spots. I think Max Mitchell, the later pick they got in this draft, could also hold up at right tackle, replace maybe George Fant in time. Fant's an okay player, but you look at Becton, Vera Tucker, you got now Tomlinson. You can run the ball a lot better with the Jets and take pressure off your quarterback, Zach Wilson. Breece Hall should be in position to be the feature back here. I think that's what's going to work. Michael Carter is going to be the occasional change of pace. I think they warmed down. I think you can forget about Coleman and these other random backs they had last year. It's going to be pretty much these 2 youngsters, Hall and Carter. And if you go backwards, if you're a DC Comics nerd, Carter Hall gives you Hawkman. Hawkman to the Jets. That sounds pretty good for fantasy football. So, but it's going to go the opposite direction, Hall and Carter in that order here for New York. So love Breece Hall with the Jets. They've committed to upgrading the passing game, which is going to provide some balance, open things up for Hall when they spread the field with their 3 receivers that now include Garrett Wilson. We talked about him being a big impact there with Corey Davis and Elijah Moore. So you can open up the field in the passing game, help your second-year quarterback, who's essentially a rookie after missing a lot of time last year, play off that good offensive line, good zone blocking scheme. You've got Breece Hall being a very valuable fantasy football asset. We're going to look at him conservatively as an RB2 here going into 2022. All right, let's look at Kenneth Walker. I liked him a little bit better. I mean, look at his resume there at Michigan State. A little bit better of power back. I think Breece Hall may have gotten a nod because he's a little bit more explosive and all-around back here. But looking at Kenneth Walker, I mean, he's legit. I mean, he can be a 3-down back here out of Michigan State. Big radar season for him where he came out of the gate flying in that game against Northwestern. He kept pouring on the big rushing totals all season long for Sparty, and a little bit of a surprise season for the team and players. So Walker, very special type runner here. Now, what does it fit with the Seahawks? Well, this pretty much tells you they have no confidence in Chris Carson returning healthy. He just has not been able to do that. That's been the biggest issue with him. When he's been on the field, fine. He's produced and been well in the system there for Pete Carroll. It doesn't matter who's been the coach. Offensively, Brian Schottenheimer transitioning to Shane Waldron. Carson's just not available, and that's a big part of the production at running back. And then Rashad Penny, I mean, before he kind of turned it on down the stretch and saved some fantasy football teams, there wasn't a lot there to look at. So it's tough here with that situation where, you know, it's tough to have one guy that you can hang your hat on in any team. But when you look at the Seahawks, I mean, they've been tired, I think, of Penny and Carson, and it just a situation where they had to do an upgrade here. So that's what you're looking at here in Seattle, where Walker can step right in. If he's the feature back, you're looking at a very good situation because not only did they upgrade that, but they also looked at what you got here for really their situation overall. I mean, it's going to be great on the offensive line. And you look at Charles Cross, the left tackle they got of Mississippi State. I think he's going to be stud there. You also have Abraham Lucas. They drafted him as well. I think he can start on the right side. Remember, they're pretty weak there as well. So very interesting developments there overall. But I like definitely Walker and that situation in Seattle. So the only question there is he going to hold up and be the feature back? That's the only question if they still have Carson and Penny in the mix, where I think Hall is a little bit more clear-cut working with the change of pace there in one Michael Carter. So really, those are the different situations. You have a complementary clear situation where one guy's getting at most of the touches, where you're looking for the right things to break for Walker. But they would have expended a second-round pick on Walker. They didn't expect a lot more, and that's what you're going to see from him here in 2022. So RB2 for sure on Breece Hall, headed that direction with Walker, but right now an RB3 with big upside here in fantasy football. All right, so that breaks down the three biggest picks there right off the bat in round 2 of the draft. We will get to round 3. We'll break that down for you on tomorrow's show, and a lot of picks there, including the quarterbacks that fell out of the first round. So very interesting, no quarterbacks going in round 2. We have a good 8 more offensive skill picks to break down for you that happened in round 2. And we'll do that in our final 2 segments here. We talked right from the top about BetOnline being a sponsor for this show. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. And that includes the other action here. USFL heated up. There were some games there while the draft was going on this weekend. There's also the NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball going into May here. So we're in May. Hard to believe that. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news at betonline.net. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. And don't forget, we have a big event this Saturday with the Kentucky Derby. So definitely good to check out betonline.net to find out what direction you want to go in the run for the Roses. Head to the website today or use a mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we will continue breaking down the second round of the real NFL draft picks here related to offensive skill positions and fantasy football. That's what we're doing here. We're taking round 2 today, round 3 tomorrow here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available to you on all platforms. All right, now we get into some more questionable picks. We like Watson and Hall and Walker there with the first 3 picks for running back and wide receiver. Now let's look at the Giants. Wan'Dale Robinson. I didn't quite get this pick. I like Robinson. I thought he was more of a lower pick, maybe in the hundreds or a third-round pick, but they jump on him in the second round here, the Giants. And really head-scratcher, because I think Kadarius Toney, who they got in the first round last year, is very similar. You also have Sterling Shepard, but we also have to keep in mind you have a new coaching staff and general manager here in Joe Shane, Brian Dable. They're trying to do different things here to help Daniel Jones. So you got Evan Neal at the right tackle there to help Andrew Thomas better protect Daniel Jones. But looking at what the Giants have with Sterling Shepard and now Toney in the mix, it's really hard to know what Wan'Dale Robinson's role is going to be. Are they sold on Toney? Are they done with his antics? He's a first-round pick. It's a new leadership group there. Do they want Wan'Dale to be more of that guy? Are they done with Sterling Shepard? Are they going to cut him at some point in camp? Is Kenny Galladay still a factor? So many things involving the Giants passing game. I got to take Wan'Dale Robinson off my fantasy football radar. I think it was a bad landing spot, kind of a redundant pick, and really disappointing pick for the Giants, where I thought they were going to be a little bit better. And I didn't know if they needed a wide receiver. I think they could have tapped in more to tight end, personally, with the losing both Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph to help in the passing game. So there's that pick. I think the next pick was much better. This might have been actually a better pick for the Giants. The Texans took John Metchi out of Alabama. Metchi is just a flat-out speedster, makes a lot of big plays. Profile's pretty good with Jameson Williams. So really looking at these wide receivers from Alabama, there's good pedigree for the most part. We've had some misses here, but overall with Metchi being a field stretcher, I think that's very appealing here. Big arm that you have in Davis Mills. The Texans didn't draft a quarterback, so still looking at Davis Mills. Maybe that tune will change there in the 2023 draft when C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young around. But Metchi, for now, you look at their offense with Nico Collins, Chris Conley, Brandon Cooks. Do they move one of these guys? Metchi needs to move up. He also is coming off a torn ACL. So, again, Excited about this pick. It may not come to fruition for any kind of production here in 2022 with the injury and the guys in front of him, unless they move one of these guys. Cooks has been on the trading block a little bit because he has the most value to a contender outside. That could maybe happen in the middle of the season once they're comfortable with Metchi being healthy here. But Metchi, Nico Collins, I think that's the future of the Texans passing game, not Cooks beyond this year. And Conley is just a guy at this point there on the depth chart. We go to the Patriots. This pick, not a fan of this one either. Tyquan Thornton, he's a big field stretcher. They're very speedy guys. Saw him at the combine, lighted up with Christian Watson. But out of Baylor, I think he's a boom bust type pick. I just didn't feel him as comfortable with some guys that went off the board. We'll talk about them. At least three of them behind him, I think, have better value at wide receiver. Really, I think it was a bit of a reach for the Patriots when there were better prospects on the board. I'm not even sure that Mac Jones' arm is best suited for this. They also went and made that deal for Devonte Parker within the division for the Dolphins. So I'm not sure what to think of the Patriots draft. They also took two running backs, and we'll get into that. And that was only in the last day in rounds 4 through 7. So further complicating things with backfield post Josh McDaniels. So just not feeling with Thornton. They got a crowd at wide receiver again with Parker adding to Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, and you got the double tight ends there with Jonas Smith and Hunter Henry. I don't know where Thornton's going to fit in all this mix. And Patriots, I mean, looking back at N'Keal Harry, who's perpetually on the trading block that no one wants, they're not very good at drafting wide receivers here, especially high. And the second round is considered high for me. They used a first rounder on Harry. So not feeling at all for Thornton being in the fantasy football purview here for this season or maybe ever. Now let's go to the Steelers pick. This is maybe the pick the Patriots should have thought of because this guy can be a big slot, also side speed prospect for the outside. So you lose James Washington by design. You keep Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool happy here. You don't keep Juju Smith-Schuster. So between Washington and Juju Smith-Schuster, much like Watson is kind of a mashup of Adams and MVS, you got Pickens here as a matchup of Juju and James Washington. Has some of those big play capabilities that Washington has displayed at times as a third wide receiver. They spread the field often. 11 personnel for Matt Canada, but he also has that big slot ability there to work it and make some big plays, work in the middle, down the seam, the way that Juju Smith-Schuster did in his best days playing off Antonio Brown for Pittsburgh. So loaded it up. They took another receiver there that we're going to break down later for you. But, yeah, very exciting to see this pick here for the Steelers. Again, very exciting to have this type of passing game here for your new quarterback, Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett looking good on the radar. We'll see where he ends up in the rankings as well as Pickens here. But Pickens is in a pretty good spot. It hurts Pat Freeman's value a little bit because they're, again, a pretty much 11 personnel team playing off Johnson and Claypool, but really like Pickens there as a pick for the Steelers. I think you'll have an impact because fantasy football just curb your enthusiasm and expectations a little bit with Johnson and Claypool putting up big numbers. But it's going to help their numbers more, having that third option that people have to pay attention to, especially unique skill set in the slot. But Freeman's hurt a little bit by the Pickens pick here. All right. That is a breakdown of 4 more picks here in this round, second round. These are the offensive skill picks we're looking at there in rounds 2, and we'll get to round 3 tomorrow. So it'll be in depth here. We'll get to all the offensive skill players. We'll talk about them a little bit, what we can expect from them in 2022 and beyond here on Locked On Fantasy Football. It is May, and again, we've stuck to our New Year's resolutions because of Built Bar, and really am excited because that means summer's coming. With summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. Throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're fueled for your summer adventures that are coming up just around the corner. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. Now you have something healthy to take on the go. With Built Bar, you can have both, and it's easy. All you have to do is go to Built.com and order now. All the Built Bars and their special puffs that are marshmallowy goodness are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means with Built Bar, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. Try all the great flavors, including with the Built Puffs, you get banana cream pie and churro, that cinnamon flavor. Yeah, delicious. And they're only 140 calories with the puffs. And they're really, Built Bars typically are awesome for you. 130 calories only there for most of them. Only 4 grams sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. So you're not going to get too high from that 130 to 140 calories there. You're going to be good to go with an excellent snack for being on the go. Built Bar, make sure that it's something for everyone, parents, kids. It's good for everyone. You get that 100% covered chocolate. You get that flavor in every Built Bar. So if you love chocolate, you're going to be very happy with Built Bar being a very good replacement to all your candy bars that usually have around 240 calories, 30 grams sugar, and dozens of net carbs. The way to get in on Built Bar is to go to built.com, get all your favorites, so whatever flavor you enjoy. There's so many more. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. Check them out right now at built.com. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, it is time to close the show, looking at 4 more skill position draft picks there from the second round. So pretty busy there, just no quarterbacks at that spot. But yeah, very excited about what these players can do for sure in different ways. I wasn't too excited about the Giants and Patriots picks. So let's get excited again. We like George Pickens to the Steelers. We also like Alec Pierce to the Colts. And again, very nice big target with a lot of speed. I think you'll have Paris Campbell, if he can stay healthy, move into the slot with the speed and quickness. So you almost have clones on the outside. Michael Pittman Jr., Michael Pierce. I think Pierce has more pure speed. I would consider him the vertical deep threat, while Pittman is more well-rounded number one. So you'd kind of put it out as in loose terms in their 11 personnel, which they use mostly under Frank Reich. And they also got depleted tight end without Jack Doyle to replenish there. That you're pretty much looking at Michael Pittman Jr. as the X and a very good fantasy football asset as a wide receiver 2. Pierce, a little bit of wide receiver 4 5 kind of feeling that could boost into wide receiver 3. It all comes down to Matt Ryan protecting him. Maybe Bernard Raymond can help him a lot. They're the rookie tackle that they got. Maybe they can put him left tackle, protect Matt Ryan better. But there's some comparisons to be had between what they have now in Pittman and Pierce and what the Falcons used to have at their top level with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. So definitely Matt Ryan, a bit of a comfort zone. Frank Reich likes a traditional pocket passer a little bit more than having a guy that can improvise and move around. Matt Ryan is certainly going to do that. He's going to rear back and get the ball in the hands of these guys. And you also have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. So you're going to set up the running game well, deep shots off play action. That's going to be there available for the Colts. The Colts are pretty run heavy, but they do want to improve their big play push in the passing game. That's why you had Alec Pierce. You move on from Zach Pascal. You don't have T.Y. Hilton. Again, Doyle leaving tight end. So a lot of vacated targets there to help with Pittman and Campbell. Campbell was somewhat involved with 20 targets last year. Not totally of zero. He did play enough, but he's got to stay healthy. And if he's not out there as much, and I don't know if Campbell's as critical with Pittman deflecting coverage, and Pierce really bumps up in the pecking order, especially with Mo Ali Cox maybe being a specialist there at tight end receiving the ball. So watch out for Alec Pierce. I loved him in Cincinnati. They're playing off Desmond Ridder, and I think it's a good fit with Matt Ryan and Frank Reich. All right, this was a pick we were very excited about here as well. The Chiefs, we know, made that blockbuster trade away of Tyreek Hill to the Dolphins. They needed a replacement. They tried their best to sign some guys, Juju Smith-Schuster, Marcus Valdes-Scantling. And keep in mind, this team also lost DeMarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle. So they had to replace some of those guys as well, those fringe wide receiver helps there for Hill. Mecole Hardman, they like him, but only as a kind of a sub-package player and a return guy. So this pick of Skyy Moore out of Western Michigan confirms the Chiefs wanted a more direct replacement here for Tyreek Hill. So you get more. Again, Skyy is a great name for him with 2 Ys. Can stretch the field, make big plays, get outside if needed. But he's also a great slot, quick toughness guy. The way that Tyreek Hill is, can flat out fly. He's going to be able to track down the Patrick Mahomes deep ball. So good recognition by Brett Veach and Andy Reid to go after a player that really profiles very similar to Hill after making the move for Hill. And you don't have to pay him nearly as much. He's a second-round pick. So he's going to be a bargain for quite a while. And we know Hill was that until they had to break the bank eventually with Mahomes helping his value as a deep threat here and really big guy with his quickness after the catch and making plays. So overall, Skyy Moore is a good replacement here for one. Tyreek Hill, we'll just have to see. There's a lot of mouths to feed. Moore's got to get into the offense with Travis Kelce and learn Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy's system there. So a lot of things to keep learning there for Moore to have that impact with Hill. But we know Hill, once he got with Mahomes, the fantasy football love was right there, and I think that can happen here as well. All right, let's go to our next pick. This is the only tight end taken there in the first two rounds. It is Trey Mcbride out of Colorado State. I really love this kid, good all-around tight end, but I don't love where he landed up for fantasy football. That would be the Cardinals. They bring back Zach Ertz. They traded for him last year. He still proved he had something left. He had a good fantasy football relevance down the stretch as a tight end one. Max Williams looked like he was going to have a big year early, but then he tore his knee up, and that kind of set up the reason to trade for Zach Ertz. So they want to make tight end a big part of what they do here with Kyler Murray. They also traded for Marquise Brown. Hollywood is in the mix there with AJ Green returning and DeAndre Hopkins. But I think look at the four target tight end is going to be pretty critical here, and not just out of necessity for the Cardinals. So looking at McBride, again, it's tough when you have Ertz and Williams there in the mix. You really have to table his value until something happens to these guys where they can give McBride a bigger role. He's got to learn how to catch and block at the NFL level as well. So looking more like 2023 here for Trey McBride and his value. But Ertz is old. Williams is injury prone, going back to his days with the Ravens. So let's watch this one carefully here. Should McBride all of a sudden find himself in a big role in this offense at some point this season working with Murray. And finally, the last pick that was offensive skill related in the second round was the selection of James Cook by the Bills. And James Cook, you might know that last name. It is Dalvin Cook's brother, and he went to Georgia. Georgia backs, two Georgia backs actually landed in really good spots. We'll break down another, and we won't be able to get to him until our day 3 analysis, round 4 through 7 on Wednesday. But Cook was pretty good in this backfield. They've done committee approaches because they can run with anybody because they always have a great offensive line also to match their defensive line. But Georgia is now the Alabama light. Maybe they're Alabama heavy at this point with what they're producing all over the board. James Cook ends up with the Bills. And what the Bills have now is a change of pace, receiving back. They don't really have that in Devin Singletary. Zach Moss is probably done here with his fantasy and reality value for Buffalo. Their other back is Duke Johnson, but James Cook, way more dynamic, young legs here coming in as a change of pace and a good pass catcher there, playing off Singletary, who was okay catching the ball, but not a big impact player or too dynamic in those situations here for a pass-happy offense with Josh Allen. Singletary is great finishing games and running hard and seeing the volume with Moss just being totally doghouse, but now they have an option such as Cook. Cook can be special here, and watch out. If something happens to Singletary, there's been a lot of injury issues with him. Cook, I don't think he's going to be necessarily a feature workhorse, and that's why he wasn't drafted as such. He's a good speed, quickness, again, change of pace guy, but he can fill in a pinch and have a big role if needed for the Bills. And again, watch out for Singletary and Moss and how things shake out. But again, pretty high investment there in James Cook in the second round. I think they would have thought about Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker if they were available too. That would have maybe changed the course a little bit. But right now, Cook in half point and full point PPR has some value. We're going to watch that play out a little bit, but don't be surprised if he has a key role for the Bills here sooner rather than later in 2022. All right, there's a breakdown of the 11 skill position picks here of the second round of the 2022 NFL Draft. We will get into the third round tomorrow. A reminder here on Locked On Fantasy Football, that's what we'll do, break down the round 3 picks and a little bit more of the skill position action. 13 picks there related to the positions, including the 2 quarterbacks of note. So we'll break that down for you on tomorrow's show. And again, 4 through 7 analysis coming in the same way there in rapid fire for you on Wednesday on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Now make Locked On NFL your second listen. The schedule may be dark, but the NFL never stops, and neither does Locked On NFL. Get insights and opinions from hosts including Ross Jackson, Chris Carter, and Tony Wiggins, plus Locked On NFL hosts repping all 32 squads. There's no offseason for real fans, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NFL on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, as well as us. You can find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We are Locked On Fantasy Football. This has been Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow with our look at the round 3 fantasy football analysis.